welcome to Priceless Advice with Leaders of Volunteers, super duper special guest, Amira Barger. And I'm so glad to see you. We don't live that far from each other, but in these times that we are in, we are Zooming. We're Zooming around the Bay Area. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be chatting with you this morning. I've got my San Francisco bridge back here behind me.
I love that that's just the natural view out your window in your house.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Wonderful. Well, we're originally scheduled a couple months ago to do this in person. We're in a new online world of interacting with each other right now. And your specialty, you speak a lot, you can consult a lot, work with agencies, is really that wonderful overlap that is so often overlooked between a donor talent pool and the volunteer talent pool, and really leveraging that role as very often overlapping into the same person and the same bunch of people.
Yeah.
So what's the same with what you're doing with technology and donors and volunteers, and what's different?
What's the same is, I think, the communication that we can do from afar, from newsletters to email pings here and there, and LinkedIn posts that help keep people informed. So that's one thing that I've been talking with a lot of people in the nonprofit sector space about is, don't go dark right now, but where you are communicating digitally, make sure that you are adding value to the conversation and not noise. And I think one of the ways to add value is to tell people what you're doing to be a helper. How are you helping the people that your nonprofit works to walk alongside in community? How are you helping inform your volunteers? How are you helping to inform your donors? And even where, as nonprofits, we're a trusted source of information for volunteers and donors. And so, what are you doing to collate or aggregate information about what's happening in the world right now that is helpful to people as they navigate this, professionally, personally, or in their decisions about where and how they volunteer and where and how they donate as well. So don't go dark is what is the same. Consistently communicate with people. And, I think people are looking for information, more than they're looking to be entertained or whatnot. They want information from trusted sources. And I think our nonprofits, the sector that we're in, people do look to us for good information about how communities need help right now and what we can do to support them.
Absolutely. I've definitely been seeing that, not just in other conversations with folks around the world, really right now in our volunteer engagement sector, but every aspect of nonprofit work, government work, community service, faith communities, that the organizations that kind of panic and shrink back and lose transparency are really having the hardest time. And the ones that are like, what? This is challenging, and here's how we get through it together, and here are the steps that we're taking, and here's where we don't have roles to fill anymore, and here's how roles are changing. And I totally agree with that transparency. So how are things, has your work shifted drastically? Because you, like me, we do some stuff in person, we do a lot of webinars and trainings online, we speak different places, and then you do consulting with certain agencies. You have like 3 full-time jobs, and you have a family at home.
True. I stay busy.
So, I don't know when you sleep, but what's really different that you're noticing in your overlapping business development and volunteer engagement sectors?
That people are having to think about ways to meaningfully engage in sustained ways, because everything that I'm reading and seeing, the outlook is that things like in-person events and items of 10 or 50 more people won't come back to us until 2021. And in the nonprofit sector, we rely on things like our gatherings, bringing the community together, whether it's through an event or a run or a walk. volunteering, at a food bank warehouse, etc. Those are all things that are very important to our work happening for the people that, are vulnerable and marginalized and disadvantaged and need nonprofits the most. So I think that people are trying to be thoughtful about how do we still pull together donors and volunteers online. So there have been many webinars that I've been on just to collect information to help people think through what that looks like. Things like a no-show gala. What does
Yeah.
that mean? Crowdsourcing and moments like this, lots of Zoom moments of having donors and neighbors that are served or volunteers coming together to tell their stories and just keep people connected and engaged. I've seen a lot of that sort of the hero storytelling of, here are people that are, in need of our services and the volunteers that they're walking alongside right now. And I've seen some really fun, interactions on Zoom and whatnot for people too, or people using new apps to have short snippets of stories of how they're going out and delivering meals or giving blood or whatever the volunteer activity or donation is. People are helping to just tell the story so that others know it can still be done. It is still needed. And here's how you can do it.
Yeah, and I've noticed since this is a different, medium of communication, it takes a different style. It takes adapting,
Mhm.
and along with, I've been doing a lot of webinars on how to use these technologies, and I'm sure you've
Yeah,
been.
people need that. They need sort of a walkthrough of,
Right.
um, I mean, we all know how to click the button to sign in and then it's on, but how do you stay engaged? How do you not get fatigued with it? How do
Mm-hmm.
you set aside time to still step outside in fresh air and breathe and self-care in the midst of so much screen time with each other? Because it can be really taxing for people.
It is, and I think I actually did a Tuesday tip earlier this week about being zoomed out. That I think particularly I have friends who are teachers and parents, so they're not just
Mm,
teaching other people's kids; they've got their own, toddlers or grade
that's a
schoolers
lot.
or teenagers at home, and it's so much, and it's so important to acknowledge that it's a lot, and not everybody knows how this technology works. I'm also seeing that this is really emphasizing not just kind of the cracks in the social safety net that we always know are there and are usually working towards in our community agencies and
Mm-hmm.
community services, but it's really emphasizing the digital divide
Mm,
and the tech inequality or technophobia that can occur not just within agencies where sometimes leadership needs really convincing to switch to technologies,
mm-hmm.
and the users themselves, that you might be losing a certain percentage of your audience who
Oh,
can't or
absolutely.
won't use this. So with your extensive skill and knowledge and background with kind of leveraging technology, are you seeing, are you doing or seeing anything around kind of addressing that digital divide, or how are you advising folks that are kind of
Mm,
hitting that technophobia barrier or access barrier?
I haven't done anything specific, but I've been reading a lot of interesting things about, in particular, the access piece for whether it's students in
Hmm.
communities or there are certain roles and sectors that their work can't be done digitally. And so there creates a barrier and an inequity there for those individuals. And then for those that can, I think what we're seeing is that there is an after, I like to say an after, not a new normal, an after that exists for them to continue working from home so that they can care for themselves and for their families, because this time I think has taught us that so many of these roles that we were previously told couldn't be done from home
Hmm.
absolutely can.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's important that we try to maintain that where people want and need it, because it helps in terms of their life setup, whether they're children that need to be cared for because we don't know when school's going to go back into session physically. So I think using these tools, it's certainly shined a light on the inequities and has also, I think, created a space and a path for those who needed this option and where it can work for them, so that it creates some access for them to be stay-at-home/work at home parents, as well for the long term.
Absolutely, and I'm also learning and having a lot of colleagues who usually do drive quite a bit. Our Bay Area commutes are legendary in a terrible way.
Oh, yeah.
You and I have talked at length over lunches about that over the years. And, there's the adage that, what in-person meeting can be done by email. And we're absolutely learning that so much can be done remotely with the proper supportive technology, reaching students, reaching workers. And it's also important that so many agencies, I think, now are playing such a tough catch-up game to technology. Either they didn't have the funding to invest in as many computers or tablets or apps of connecting volunteers and donors. I've definitely had a bunch of people calling me to consult about how do I develop a micro donation app? How do I develop a micro volunteering app? How do I develop what are the two-way texting apps that are out there? And I don't work for any of these companies, but I can say, these ones work, these ones don't. That hasn't been invented yet. Go get a grant and invent it. That'd be great. So in your kind of, overlap of the philanthropy world, are you seeing foundations kind of stepping up and fast tracking grants, and particularly around technology, or what kind of shift have you seen in that part of the sector?
Really positive ones. The Council of Foundations here on the US side in particular has created a site where foundations are actively, it's a live Excel sheet where foundations are actively making known, where there are new buckets of money and buckets of money with less stringent criteria and quicker access for nonprofits, which has been really exciting to see that there is so much being drawn down from those foundation funds because there's so much immediate need, and they're making it easier for trusted nonprofits that they have known for years to access more dollars from foundations they've been funded by. I've seen many community foundations release donor advised funds, which are notoriously known for sitting there for years on end with small percentages distributed,
like a dragon's pile of gold.
Yeah. And now community foundations have really they've been trying to do this for 10 plus years. The nonprofit community foundations are in particular stepping up and saying, you need to use these dollars now. If ever there were a time, as we've been telling you for years, but these nonprofits need these dollars. They need computers and tablets for students. Parents need, a bridge to the next job because layoffs are happening and employment is high. So I've been really encouraged to see so many of those foundation leaders speak up very audibly about, how we can use those dollars now and where do we sort of empty those buckets because it's needed and there's not a good reason for those dollars to just sit there. So and I've seen companies like Microsoft and others step up with donations to school districts. I know our school district here saw some of that too, and that's been really exciting to see that there have been just generous gifts of technology for students who need that access, and for their parents to be able to help them continue their learning in what is a very uncertain timeline about when schools will get back to in-person sessions. So it's been really positive. There's been so much generosity, and I think there's going to be continued waves of it because they're saying we're going to see some more shifts in how we move through this world in the fall, or at least continued state of what we're in right now. So I think there will be another wave of donors who are waiting for that second wave to make sure that they can help be generous in what is going to be a really sustained new situation we find ourselves in.
Absolutely. And I'm doing a lot of messaging and I'm seeing a lot of messaging, which is great that we're starting to all in a sector or a number of sectors that have anything to do with donor engagement or volunteer engagement, starting to speak in the same voice, which is work I've been working on for a few years. So it's great to, even if it's a crisis or a tragedy that makes us do that, we're like, oh, these things are kind of common sense. And a lot of the conversations I'm having are around, there's no going back to normal. There will be a new normal, and we absolutely will all need to adapt. And some things that haven't been very functional in our sector or agencies or systems or processes or ways of being or cultures must go away, must fade away, and new and better ways of being in this situation, whether it's more remote work or different kinds of digital engagement, or recognizing where else to fill that social safety net that isn't being fulfilled, by the rest of society or government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to have stay true kind of through this, that's been a core of your work, and what would you like to see drastically change for the better?
Mm. I would like to see a couple things. The flexibility, I would like that to stay true. The flexibility and the kindness, the care, and the vulnerability that we're all having with each other. I've gotten to know and understand my own coworkers and clients in new and different ways. As I have, a dog or a kid shouting in the background, and the hold on 1 minute, I'm
Yeah.
going to put myself on mute
Yeah.
conversations that we're all having. And just that insight into people remembering our individual and collective humanity, that we're all people. I want to see that continue, that we all have lives in addition to the work that we wake up and do from 9 to 5 every day, and some longer. I want that to continue, the flexibility, the vulnerability, and the care that we're giving each other in new and more explicit ways. Now, I think what I'd like to see change, that's a really good question.
We may not know yet. There's a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of unknowns.
There's still a lot of sort of feeling several things out. We don't know what the after is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for us to also recognize that none of us are, someone said this, I'm going to get the phrasing wrong, but we're not really working from home. We're at home trying to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important difference. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want us all to get a chance to work from home in whatever the new normal um, is, and I want people to be able to sustain that. And I think that should be something that where organizations can accommodate it, that we try to do that for people and give them a chance to set up their lives in ways that are helpful to them living life outside of the four office walls.
I do appreciate, I absolutely agree with all that. And I appreciate that people are calling this the great pause. A lot of my background, as you know, is in environmental conservation. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're definitely seeing some positive effects from not just personally, for like our own mental and physical health, not driving around in traffic and breathing fumes all the time, but seeing some benefits to, in many ways, reducing a carbon footprint worldwide simultaneously. It's a grand experiment, and it's a grand opportunity. And one of the ways that I think that we're benefiting is really appreciating family and friends more, and that connection, and coworkers. And I think I've found myself, I think I'm always a pretty good friend or coworker, or value relationships, but it's really emphasized right now to carry that through. Like you're talking about, the empathy, the compassion, understanding each other as people and not cogs in the machine.
Yeah.
Whether we're
No, it's
working,
absolutely true.
working for large corporations, or for ourselves, or medium-sized or small nonprofits. I'm also seeing, particularly in San Francisco, and I've talked about this on a couple segments because it's so exciting and interesting to me that it took for this to happen. But Shanti and the city of San Francisco have combined forces for CERV, serve. And that actually rose from a model that had started with a small nonprofit, Oakland Cares, in East Oakland,
Nice.
of really how can both municipalities, government, and nonprofits forge new partnerships. In this case, it's specific to getting food insecurity solved, to getting more food and more groceries to people who need it, and filling the gap.
Basic need. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Such a core basic need, and such a frontline, often in-person thing to do. And how do we do that safely, and how do we have new partnerships? Have you in your work seen new partnerships or unique solutions to some of the challenges that we're facing filling these community needs and services?
Some of the clients that I work with on the for-profit side, it's been exciting to see them, pivot and change their production lines and warehousing to make things that are needed for PPE needs, masks. and hospital gowns and things, and to continue to keep their workforce employed and paid and benefited by helping the frontline workers in healthcare. That's been really exciting to see. And I think those are such interesting partnerships, the different ventilators that are being created by car manufacturing companies and the shifts that people have made there to be a part of ensuring our frontline has exactly what they need and in really timely ways. So I've been really glad to see that.
It's very encouraging. And again, that idea of keeping the goodwill and the humanity and that recognition and new connection, even if it's physically distanced, if not socially distanced and digitally distanced, keeping that connection and hopefully coming out of this into the new normal, whatever that looks like for the next several months or years, is really what we're looking at. I don't think the world is ever going to go back to what it was. And that's an important message for people to realize and absorb and adapt to. I'm really excited to see that so many barriers to funding and barriers to engaging volunteers and donors and just the whole community in a new way are being removed, accidentally or on purpose, because of the COVID-19 situation. And I've been particularly heartened that a few great thought leaders and voices in the nonprofit sector. I know Vu Lee has fantastic threads on Twitter about shaming people who don't get off their gold coin piles and their, deep endowments. That again, like if there's ever a time to free up that money to keep the economic machine rolling and to keep all these essential services in our communities going and not leave people high and dry, this is the time to do it. What are you personally, not just professionally, but what's kind of been your favorite aspect of how we're living our lives right now, and what do you hope for in the future, whether that's a near future or far future, for yourself and your family and friends and loved ones?
We've always loved the national parks and state parks and county and city parks. And so in safe, socially, physically distancing ways, we've been taking a lot of hikes. The sun is starting to come back out. It was a little rainy and cloudy in April, but the sun is starting to come out and make it really nice and enjoyable for us to get outside and breathe the fresh air together with the dog and my husband and daughter. So I've really enjoyed that, being able to sort of pause in the middle of the day and take a unique lunch break of just stepping outside for a minute. Has been really nice and powerful. It's nice to get up and step away from the screen and to have those moments of self-care and just spending time with the people that you love. So I'm glad that so many people have, responsibly learned about and experienced our national parks and our state parks because of all that's happening. It's been, I think, really helpful for people's mental and emotional health to step outside into nature. And we know that health science tells us that, to get outside and breathe in green spaces. So I hope that people continue to do that. I was reading an interesting article about kids and how, they're starting to think about studies about kid happiness, and that we often try to structure their lives so much. And in this new space of some free time to make their own decisions about how they're spending their day, that it has helped with the mental and emotional health of a lot of kids and whatnot. So I think that's really interesting, is having time to go outside and just play and be. I think play is helpful and powerful for kids and adults too. So I hope we all continue to do that and to live life outside of the 9 to 5 or the 4 walls of an office. And I think people have always wanted that. And I think for many people there, not for all, but for some people, there have been chances to really live that out right now in this pause that we're experiencing.
Amira, I'm so glad to have your wisdom on priceless advice this time, and really wish you and your family and everybody are well and continue to be, and we'll connect again as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Continue to be well, and I look forward to one of these days, maybe karaoke. We'll do that.
That would be amazing.